"6,000 miles west of the United States and within 100 miles of China's southeast coast lies an island slightly larger than Maryland. Its Chinese name is Taiwan, which means Bay of Terraces, but we know it better by its Portuguese name, Formosa, meaning beautiful island, a name given by explorers who came from Portugal to these tropical shores 350 years ago. They and the Dutch and Spaniards who followed found ancient head-hunting tribes and a primitive agricultural civilization. In the late 17th century, Europeans were forced out of Formosa and natives were driven into the mountains by a vast stream of emigrants from the expanding empire of China. Formosa became part of that empire. For more than 200 years, its civilization reflected the ways of the mainland. The influences of old China may be seen today, especially in the lives of Formosan Chinese farmers. Many of them follow the ancient faiths of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. Many speak a Chinese dialect adapted from China and feel a traditional respect for the importance of the family, for the wisdom of elders, for the special, restricted role of women. But ancient civilization has given way to modern history. After a war with China in 1895, the Japanese took possession of Formosa. In the next 50 years, their rule transformed the island into a valuable colony. The foundation was built for one of the highest standards of living in Asia. New hydroelectric power began to be used. Agricultural production was multiplied. Power set in motion new industries, which created new commerce and new wealth. Formosa's mountains gave up their coal, copper, and gold. Its vast forests gave up their camphor. Crude oil began to be imported and refined for export. Formosa's main crops, sugarcane and rice, established the island as a vital source of agricultural wealth for the empire of the rising sun, which also benefited from the development of Formosan industry. Much of the transportation and communication systems seen in Formosa today were built under Japanese rule, including 2,500 miles of railroad and thousands of miles of highway and of telegraph and telephone line. Half a dozen cities were built, most important of which is the capital Taipei, whose population exceeds 500,000 people. Here the old ways are surrounded by the new. Many modern customs of the Western world were imported to Formosa and rigidly imposed by the Japanese, whose power was symbolized by the government headquarters they raised over all other buildings in Taipei. From the ports of this colony, their imperial forces embarked to invade the Philippines in the Second World War. By 1945, Allied victory reduced the Japanese empire to ruins, ending 60 years of Japanese exploitation of Formosa, which was returned to Chinese control. China, torn by post-war revolution, was overpowered by communist forces. Taking refuge in Formosa, where communists had not gained control, the national government of China was followed in flight by Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and the battered remains of his nationalist forces. Chiang began to retrain and reinforce his troops for the defense of their Formosan redoubt. In setting out to regain their strength, the Chinese government used the island's resources, as well as the inadequate materiel they had rescued from the mainland. More recently, Chong and his staff have also begun to train their forces for future offensive action. Their ultimate aim is to return to the mainland. The Chinese government already sends its voice as far as Manchuria. It receives information about communist China from its guerrillas. The Chinese have also dropped rice on the Chinese mainland to relieve reported famines and to tell the people that on Formosa there is rice to spare. Meanwhile, since 1945, a new kind of strength and influence has come to Formosa to repair the wreckage of war. The United Nations has provided emergency relief, and the United States Mutual Security Agency has sent raw material, industrial products, funds, and guidance to help Formosa rebuild itself. With this help, the island has already been able to restore and start increasing its electric power. It has been able to start rebuilding and increasing its industrial equipment. And it has begun to manufacture its own vital needs, such as chemical fertilizer for its land. The Joint Commission on Rural Reconstruction, supported largely by the United States Mutual Security Agency, has given vital assistance to the Chinese on Formosa, 2/3 of whom are engaged in agriculture. The Commission's members are appointed by both the Chinese and United States governments. Through their guidance, nearly 400 rural health centers have been established to provide all of Formosa with the modern means of curing and preventing disease. These centers, while assisted by the Joint Commission, are largely supported by local funds. Each community thus bears much responsibility for advancing the health of its own families. Health measures have also been extended to the livestock so vital to agriculture. More than half the hogs on Formosa have already been vaccinated against cholera. The Joint Commission also helps to improve and increase the production of rice and sugarcane, still the island's chief crops. New and better agricultural techniques are passed on to all the farmers through the meetings and other activities of nearly 400 farmers' associations. Through these organizations, the farmers not only receive advice, but also are able to keep the Joint Commission informed as to their own problems and needs. The aid extended to the Formosan people is no giveaway scheme. Its purpose, above all, is to help them help themselves. Their increased opportunities are especially evident in the new courts, through which they can take advantage of the land rent reform introduced since the war by the Chinese government. Aided by the Joint Commission, rent inspection teams help the Formosan farmer to obtain a more just contract from his landlord. The old oppressive system, which forced the farmer to surrender up to 3/4 of his crops as rent, has now given way to new laws. They forbid the landlord to take more than 3/8 of the farmer's crops. Through the action of the local rent inspection team, the farmer can thus look ahead for the first time to a day when he can possess his own land free of debt. Such reform is a significant step toward removing an ancient evil that has long oppressed Asia. Rent reform has been accompanied by the beginnings of post-war government reform. Through political campaigns, long familiar to us but new to them, the people of Formosa are making their voices heard for the first time. They now elect their local mayors, town and county councils, and county magistrates through popular secret ballot. Long subjected in the past to outside control from above, Formosan Chinese can now experience the beginnings of self-government. Their provincial government, which governs the island, is becoming increasingly subject to popular demand for more honest, solvent, and democratic rule. Formosa was detached from the Japanese Empire in 1945 and was again administered as a province of China. The national government of China, recognized by the majority of nations, is at present located on Formosa. Following the outbreak of hostilities in Korea, the President of the United States ordered the 7th Fleet to patrol the strategic waters around Formosa and keep the conflict away from its shores. Red Chinese intervention in Korea has intensified this mission. Since 1950, the United States has taken further steps to defend the island from communist invasion. As part of the mutual aid program, U.S. Military Assistance Advisory Group personnel are now stationed in Formosa to assist in developing that defense. They are cooperating with the Chinese Navy. American advisors are helping to guide the supply and training of the Chinese Army. They are assisting in the development of the Chinese Air Force. United States planes have now taken over much of the Formosan patrol, thus freeing American ships for action off Korea. Meanwhile, the island's 8 million people face their future with anxiety. But the individual Formosan Chinese can also look ahead with hope. He has become important in the worldwide struggle for a better life. He is receiving help in ridding himself of the poverty and hunger that breed communism, as well as in building his strength to resist the aggressive powers that seek communism's expansion. His future will influence all his neighbors. His progress, like that of the rest of the world, depends on the wisdom, strength, and resolution of himself and of free men everywhere.